All right, so you can see here we've got a list of software applications that are kind of most common in the supply chain industry. I'm not going to walk through the entire list. You'll see a ton of acronyms here, obviously, and we'll walk through um, some of these in more detail. This would just be kind of a base list of, high level. Here are some different tools that you may come across. MRP, the first one listed here, this is material resources planning or material requirements planning. CRM is customer relationship management. Um, Next up, we've got TMS, which is Transportation Management System, and its brother, the WMS or Warehouse Management System, tells you where in the warehouse parts are located. ERP is Enterprise Resource Planning. Typically, an ERP includes all of these above pieces, as well as some more depth around accounting and things like that. QMS is a quality management tool, typically recording quality issues, reporting out on containment efforts, prevention, all those types of things. Then you've got a whole suite of tools around inventory. Basically, where's it located? How much are we paying for it? What should we do differently with it? Optimization really could fit in any of these categories. So we've got all this information. How do we optimize the flow of products? Where do we put new warehouses, new manufacturing sites, etc. Next up, procurement. If you've ever done any kind of bidding activities, it's kind of like eBay, but at a corporate level. Procurement tools help you manage RFPs or RFQs to handle supplier selection and those types of things. MES is a manufacturing execution system. It's more kind of the nuts and bolts of how product flows through the production lines, level loading lines, and making sure you've got the right resources in place. And then the last one there, BI or business intelligence. This is, again, kind of like the optimization piece. This is, let's take all the data we've collected and make it visible, measure certain things, see where we have problems, those types of things. So we'll do a deeper dive on some of these. I would like to say that acronyms are not always this common, but it's it's really, really common to have a page with this many acronyms that you have to learn. Anytime you're working in a supply chain environment. So good luck with that. All right, first one, MRP, Material Requirements Planning. So this is basically a very, very tactical management system for parts. So which parts do you need? How many do you have? Those types of things. So just to walk through a really basic example, let's say that you make sandwiches, like peanut butter sandwiches. So a customer orders 12 sandwiches, right? And you only have 10, or you only have 2 in stock, right? So your MRP system is going to take those orders in and look at how many you have, and it's going to say, okay, we need to make 10 more sandwiches to fulfill our order, right? So that's our plan. We need to produce 10 more sandwiches. So then you compare that to a bill of materials. Bill of materials basically says each sandwich contains these things, right? So a bill of materials for a peanut butter and jelly sandwich would be, 2 pieces of bread, 4 ounces of peanut butter, and 2 ounces of jelly. That's a pretty weak sandwich, but we'll just go with it, right? So 2 pieces of bread, 4 ounces of peanut butter, and 2 ounces of jelly. So now we're going to check our production plan, which is 10 sandwiches, and our bill of materials against what we have in stock. So let's say, hey, we've got 100 pieces of bread. Great. We don't need to order any bread, but we only have 20 ounces of peanut butter. Well, we need to make 10 sandwiches at 4 ounces each, so we need 40 ounces of peanut butter. So we do need to order some more peanut butter, right? So that's, at a super, super basic level, that's what an MRP system is doing, is every day, do we have enough finished goods? No. We need to make some more. Okay. Do we have enough to make more? No. Okay. Let's order from suppliers. And you're doing this, it feels like you're doing a day of, but you're actually backing all of this up to match the lead time. So if it took 2 weeks to get jelly in, guess what? We need to look out further to see how much jelly we're going to need to be able to pull it in and have it available for when we need to make those sandwiches. So yeah, that's MRP, basically just making sandwiches. Next up is ERP, which is Enterprise Resource Planning. So we talked about SAP in class on Monday. This is a kind of the gold standard, or the most common standard for ERP systems is SAP. ERP systems are basically that MRP piece, but also accounting, manufacturing, customer management, HR, finance, sales, like everything involved in running a business outside of like legal documentation. Honestly, like there's not much else missing from it, is going to appear in an ERP system. All of you have an SAP user ID. That's basically what your UK ID is. It's just a massive database. SAP is used at the University of Kentucky for students and faculty, employees, everyone, to run basically everything around operating the university. So it's a very, very, very robust tool. It is like highly powerful as a database. It's also extremely inflexible. Like I remember when I first started back teaching, it's like, hey, I need to get my student ID changed over into an employee ID, and it was like, well, we just can't do that. Like, well, how? Surely I'm not the first person, right? Like, no, we need to issue a new one. Like, well, but that's going to affect this, and they're like, no, we just can't do that, right? It's just not possible. Like, oh my goodness. Like, as a software person, I know that's actually not terrible to accomplish, but if you had the breadth of database tables and all the connections being made that SAP does, you realize quickly, like, okay, that's just not going to happen, right? So it's really powerful, but it's also very difficult to change and tweak. Typically, the cost savings you see from implementing an ERP are in the 5+ year range. So you pay for the first few years. Things get a little worse before they get better. And then you slowly start to make improvements in efficiencies and information sharing, all that. And then about 5 years out from implementing, you actually see the benefits of implementing an ERP system. The average cost to implement, the latest data I could find was 2014. It was about $4.5 million. I will tell you, there are companies my size that have an ERP, right? We could use one that's probably $100 a year. We're just a very small business, right? So that 4.5 million is definitely skewed a little bit down. But any company that you all work with of any size, you're going to have some type of software like this that sits on top of everything or underneath everything, depending on how you look at it, and basically runs the nuts and bolts of your business. So that's an ERP system. And I am sorry to all of you that have to work in them constantly, because it can be a frustrating experience. If you're someone that works on the BI side where you're looking at data, you will definitely appreciate the standardization that ERP systems bring to the table. Next up is a TMS. TMS is a transportation management system. Basically a tool. It could be planning and execution, or just execution. Just a tool to figure out where do we need trucks, who has trucks, etc. So most TMS systems will convert your orders. So hey, we need to get some peanut butter into our store, right, or into our sandwich making plant. So it takes that peanut butter order and changes it into, okay, well, we can put that on this route, and it'll be picked up at this time. And then it also manages all the load level information, like, hey, we've planned this route, we're going to go pick this up. Well, how much are we going to pay for this route, right? Let's find out which carrier can take it, etc. It also lets you know, like, hey, here's all the routes that we're running today or this week. Like, here's all the loads that are on the road today. So it gives you kind of some real-time information. This is one of the biggest reasons companies will outsource to a 3PL. What sets most 3PLs apart is their TMS system. which gives them kind of a leg up on competitiveness, either across different 3PLs or a reason why people would outsource because they don't have their own internal TMS to answer all these questions. Most 3PLs build their own in-house. It's really funny to see one that doesn't, and they try and brand an off-the-shelf product as their own. Those are fun conversations to pick those apart. But any 3PL that you guys would be looking at is going to have their own proprietary technology here, again, which really sets them apart from manufacturers and makes them a good outsource partner. EDI is electronic data interchange. This one is going to definitely be the most boring topic we cover, which is probably shocking because I'm sure you guys are bored with some of this stuff already, but EDI is actually like a really, really powerful tool. It's basically a very standard process for communicating between different companies. So, and when I say companies, it's actually two different systems. So you'll have like SAP at your supplier and maybe Oracle in your own operation, like two different ERP systems. And you ship, or they ship product to you, right? So in the old school method, they would send over like an advanced shipping notification, maybe over email, or they would fax you something, or you would get a receipt at the dock on a pallet. So there's paperwork happening, people are printing things out, communicating kind of ad hoc. The new process, the new version of that is basically there's an agreed upon format. Hey, anytime an ASN comes across an advanced ship notification, this is the format you're going to use, right? So both parties know, the supplier and the customer know about that standard format, and they both use it. And suddenly there's a common language being spoken for that particular transaction, which means you can get those transactions going really quickly, and no one has to be involved in that. Just suddenly you see in your system, oh, they did ship that peanut butter, right? That's done. That's taken care of. I don't need to worry about that anymore, right? The only way that's possible is if all of these different tools, there's probably, I would guess, there's over 100 different ERP systems. Can you imagine having to come up with any kind of language between each of those without a standard like this in place? So you come up with that standard, and basically that information again just gets passed in real time. So there's very little delay, like there would be if there were emails or faxes going back and forth. The other benefit here, if you are using EDI, because it is standard, like there's one format for an advanced ship notification across everyone. There's actually a US format and then an international format. So there are two, but that's the only possibility. If you're going to send an ASN, that's how you do it. Let's say you want to cut a new purchase order to one of your customers, to one of your suppliers. You can use the standard EDI form for purchase orders, which includes a specific set of database fields and values. They know what that is, and so they're able to receive it, and then they're able to send you a confirmation back, which is a separate EDI, right? So each of these has a standard in place, which means you're always, guaranteed whichever partner you work with, as long as they are EDI compliant, you can talk to them basically without any kind of customization, which is really powerful, and it's been a big game changer in the supply chain industry over the past, let's say, 12 to 15 years. Like a massive change in the amount of work involved in that transactional activity. So I've talked about a few of these, but basically, when you send a purchase order to a supplier and they acknowledge it, that's pretty common. When they ship something, did you receive it? You're going to send them some kind of an EDI transaction, and then an advanced ship notification when they actually say, hey, I'm sending this, it's on the way to you. The faster those get to you, the faster you can make changes to your process. So it's just a really powerful tool that can help, especially on the transactional side. And then the last one here, business intelligence. Basically, what you're trying to do is see data at a different level than you have before. So the first thing you have to do is set up some kind of automated process to collect that data. Wouldn't it be nice if you had a massive system that was collecting all this and putting it in a very systematic and standard format, right? That's called ERP, right? So if you have an ERP system, it's really easy to bolt on a business intelligence product, because you can say, this table will always contain the information I need, right? Because it's not going to change. No one's going to change that table, right? So that is absolutely the first step, is setting up some kind of process to collect the data. You can really quickly dive deep into the information that's presented to you. So when I first started at LeanCore, we would create these dashboards that would show, here's the weekly fill rate across all suppliers. Well, you get into the meeting and someone says, wow, we dipped by 8% there. What happened? Well, then someone has to go pull the data, examine, and then, in real time on the call, like, well, I think it was probably supplier ABC, but I'm not positive. Let me get back to you next week, right? Just really inefficient, right? So we moved into kind of more of a live format on dashboards and reporting, where instead of having to kind of do the process over again to analyze it, you could actually just click right into those living dashboards and say, look at this dive, let's see what happened. Oh, here's the suppliers with the most issues from this week or last week, right? So it just gives you kind of a more live version for kind of on-demand analysis, which is really, really powerful in the right hands. You do have to understand how the software works, and also kind of the analytics process, how the data is derived. So it's not like you can just hand it to a customer at Kroger and say, here, look at all of our pricing changes on things you normally buy or something. Like that it'd be hard for someone to understand that. But if it's a pricing analyst at Kroger, they could look at a tool like that, and suddenly you've increased the power at their disposal, 100x easily, because they have so much more information available to them. So just a little bit on strategy here, and again, I'm probably a little jaded after working in industry for a decade and now on the software side. So I will do my best to contain my lack of excitement for some pieces of technology. But these are just some kind of lessons that I've learned that I would certainly recommend based on my experience on technology. So first piece, and this is absolutely critical, you have to have some kind of strategy in place. So many companies will just basically get sold a new product, or maybe we get a new VP of logistics in, like, well, we used Oracle, so let's go buy Oracle. Like, well, maybe that's not the right decision if we've been an SAP shop for the last decade, right? So you have to have a high level strategy, like how are we going to handle technology? How are we going to stay out in front of it? Because the last thing you want is to be chasing training or implementation costs, because they will quickly spiral out of control. There's a tool called Agile Development. Basically, instead of, if you are going to build things internally, instead of building things in very, very long release cycles, I would highly recommend using a tool like Agile. It's basically a process of releasing things quickly in very small batches, so you can see what's working and what's not. It does require a certain level of management, but it also leads to considerably happier customers, especially on the internal side. So the IT group doesn't become like the hated enemies of the operations group, which is not an understatement. Talk to current and past customers prior to making big purchase decisions. So let's say you get sold SAP. Like, all right, we're going to do it. The very first thing I would do is call whoever's selling it to you and say, I want to talk to the person that fired you last. Which is typically like, I don't want you to talk to them, right? Like, okay, well then I'm not going to do business with you. So if you can get a chance to talk to someone who used to be a customer and find out, hey, why did you stop doing this? And what you may find out is, oh, that product wasn't right for them, and we're nothing like them, right? That could be very easy to find out. Or you could find out, wow, they sold us this product and it didn't do any of the things that they told us it would, right? Wouldn't you like to know that today instead of a year from now when you've spent all this money trying to implement it, right? Overinvest in training. I think I covered that earlier. It does seem like overkill, but it's way better than chasing and trying to catch up at a later date. Next up, anytime you're making an acquisition, you absolutely have to be paying attention to IT. What are the systems impacts of this acquisition? Can we absorb a new business without bringing one of us down to our knees? There's a company in Central Kentucky that made a big acquisition a few years ago, and everyone touted all the synergies and economies of scale, etc., of them working together. Those two companies today are still on different systems. Guess how many synergies there are when you can't see orders and shipping volumes across those two different halves of the company? Very, very few is the answer, right? And now you're paying one IT group to manage two systems, which is not optimal. Let me say it that way. Connect IT and users to prevent something called shadow IT. It's a funny term. Basically, tools like Dropbox, that's one of the more common examples given. A lot of times employees will go to IT and say, hey, can you provide me with a solution to do this or that, right? If IT is not able to listen and empowered to help the users, a lot of times the users will just go rogue and go find something themselves. Like, okay, cool. If you're not going to build this for me, I'll just go download an app that does it for me, right? Which, certainly in the short term is a great solution. The problem is in the long term or even the medium term, if that technology was not vetted by your internal resources, suddenly data breaches and customers being impacted, it's just very dangerous, right? So shadow IT, it's kind of a fun name. It's actually really dangerous, especially at larger companies, and it's a symptom of an IT group that's not connected to the users. Maybe they're not allowed to be or whatever, but they're not listening to the users, the voice of their internal customers, to help build new technologies or find new technologies for them and vet them.